Hello and welcome to Corn-Fed Sports in the Morning here on this Wednesday morning. We had our new site come out yesterday, a bunch of new features come out yesterday, and so now we're going to put some of those to use and actually use our show page. So this will be our first Corn-Fed Sports in the Morning video show that goes on the actual video page for it. We're going to have our radio show coming out tomorrow morning, but those will be in separate places, so you can just get used to finding our Corn-Fed 5 and some of our other segments in one spot. So I'm Pat Radigan. Gage Peak is joining me today as always, so we're going to jump in. We have a Corn-Fed 5 in our first segment, and we're debuting a new segment called Say What in our second segment. So we have something more than just football in our Corn-Fed 5, so let's just jump in, but we do have a football topic for number one.
Yeah, absolutely. Last night there was media availability. A couple other times last week you guys had media availability. Overall, what is your impressions with kind of how things have been going, after practice?
With it being now into the two-a-days portion, more of the hands-on part of camp, it's starting to make a turn towards more like the in-season type interviews, type of storylines that are coming out. So it's just interesting seeing some of that kind of stuff. Guys moving down and playing linebacker, young guys in the defensive line who people are saying that we need to watch, as well as even spots on the O-line where guys think that maybe a spot is sewn up or that something's going for sure that somebody's going to be the left guard or left tackle. Some of those guys that people have put in those positions are saying, hey, it's not me and then guys behind me. It's all of us together. We're competing as one big unit. Nobody knows who the stars is. Every position's out there, as well as Amir kind of saying the same thing about the running backs and saying, hey, we don't have short down backs. We have backs that do everything. And so everybody just kind of has that same mentality of doing everything, of just kind of approaching it as if you're going to be the number one guy. And so just seeing that happen, seeing young guys move into the secondary, seeing other guys move from cornerback into safety and some of those other areas, it's just interesting to see it actually happen now. Instead of just saying, well, maybe we can do this or this has been talked about, now to actually see them living up to that moment. So I know that it kind of started as a ramble there, but that's my biggest impression is seeing it play out, seeing guys' response to what they're seeing on the practice field. You haven't had that in a while. You haven't really had that kind of go with all the guys around with the young team. Spring didn't really give you a good idea of that. So just seeing how all the chips are falling, how all the new faces are fitting in, how this edition of the Nebraska football team is going to look. I just think it's been interesting over the last couple of days with two-a-days, with the stress of camp picking up, just to see how some of the guys step up and some of the guys kind of fall into the background. So it's just interesting to see it all kind of play itself out, and that obviously there's a long way to go before the kickoff of the first game, but we're already starting to see some of the chips fall. We're already to see some of the players find a place and find a role on this team. So that's just kind of my initial reaction.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving away from football now, we go to number two. The Nebraska volleyball team actually has their media day tomorrow at the football stadium. Going into the season, there's a lot of new faces, but a lot of good talent coming back and then joining the team. What are your early impressions of the volleyball team? What are your expectations?
I think that although they're ranked 10th, they come in ranked 10th. They're one of 7 teams in the top 25. But the thing that probably jumped out to people is, A, that this is Nebraska's lowest ranking in 30 years, and B, that schools like Michigan and Minnesota at 6 and 7, or 7 and 6 respectively there, and then obviously Penn State up towards the top, that Nebraska's kind of picked as that fourth team in the Big Ten. And I think that what people don't realize is, there's a lot of new faces and there's a lot of people that haven't really shown themselves in a Huskers uniform. But at the same time, that same system with these same people from Michigan, same people from Minnesota, when they have the bodies, when they have the people that play the roles that Nebraska sets out for themselves, they can't really stick with Nebraska. Nebraska's blown by some of these teams. They've at Minnesota, I was there for a road match when they came from behind and beat Minnesota in what seemed like an upset for sure. And so although it's not Hannah and Gina in there, you got people like Kelsey Robinson and All-American. That's kind of the missing part of this equation, is that you have the top recruiting class in the country, which can be expected in a young building like this, but you have a former SEC Player of the Year who's been a workhorse at the D1 level, who's been an All-American, who's played in the NCAA tournament, as well as a setter who's kind of that second tier of All-American coming in, and Mary Palmer, another transfer from Tennessee. So you have both those pieces, as well as the right side and Morgan Brookice and Megan Haggerty in the middle, who've been honorable mention All-American. So Megan and Kelsey have some chemistry from being from Chicago and growing up together. So there's chemistry on the team, there's All-American talent, and there's the top recruiting class in the country. And so people may see, it's a rebuilding year, the chips are down, but last time that happened, Nebraska makes a run in the NCAA tournament, gets to the Final Four. And so young does not necessarily mean bad in this instance, because there's a lot of talent. Amber and Katie Rolfson, I'm going to start in the new trend now, Amber and Katie Rolfson, rather than just saying the Rolfson twins, because I think they're both going to be doing a lot of different things, but a lot of dynamic things that this team needs. I mean, what better way to kind of get you back on track that you can sub, have similar players, obviously similar build with them being twins, but similar people come in with different skill sets to kind of mix it up and let them kind of get back on track. So I anticipate early on seeing some of the younger players moving in and out for each other and just kind of giving each other release from having all that pressure on them at one time. But with that number of bodies, with the level of talent and athleticism on this year's team, I I think the sky's really the limit for what they're able to do.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Another women's sport that's getting ready to start up in 2 days, Nebraska women's soccer team plays host to Colorado College in their first exhibition game at the Nebraska soccer field. What are your early expectations on the women's soccer team coming off of a kind of a down year?
And maybe not necessarily just expectations, but what I'm most looking forward to is just the next step for the chemistry and for what we see in the on-field product. Nebraska is one of the few teams that really preaches possession and just tries to hold the ball and implement their game plan, no matter who it is. If it's Penn State, if it's no matter what level of talent they're playing against, they're going to try and do their own thing. So with all the players coming back, not just the starters, but the substitutes, the role players, the people who are looking to break into the lineup, as well as new young faces. I mean, with last year, heat of the year, just kind of week to week, it's hard to kind of absorb your role and know where you're at on the team. But they've all had an offseason to think about it. They've all had some time to reflect, and they really know where they stand coming into this year. So just to see them all get back on the field, to see that dynamic work itself out on the field, I'm just really excited to see how that next progression is and how the same faces can join together to make something much better than what came out last year. So we'll talk more about that on our morning show tomorrow. We're going to have an in-depth breakdown and preview of what we're looking for tomorrow. So I'll kind of leave that there. But Nebraska soccer, they have a lot of reasons to be excited for Friday's game.
Yeah, absolutely. The excitement building all around campus with fall camp or all the fall sports getting ready to start up. Which game or event are you most looking forward to?
I'm going to go outside of the box here. Everybody's, the countdown's to August 31st. They've been out there. Soccer opens before that. Cross country opens somewhere else. But the one thing I'm going to pick is the volleyball, the opening of the Devaney Center for volleyball. I mean, everybody's just saying, oh, yeah, Pinnacle Bank's going to be fun, and this is going to be fun. Nebraska's got the longest sellout streak of any women's sports in NCAA history with the volleyball program, and that home court advantage in the Coliseum is something that it's kind of shook me up from time to time at certain moments, and just seeing it up close and personal. So being in there and being in that atmosphere, with Villanova, with Georgia, with some teams that maybe aren't top national talent, but some teams who have seen some big arenas, to see how they react, to see how that home court advantage plays out with thousands of more people in attendance, with the clubs feeding with some of those different things. I mean, as long as they keep Eileen's Colossal Cookies there, I'm going to be happy. So that's all I'm looking forward into in the transition from the Coliseum to the Devaney Center. But other than that, all the newness can only help. So new players, you got the new arena, and just kind of some new faces people are going to see. So I can't wait for the first roof, roof, roof chant to come out in the new Devaney Center. But that's what I'm picking into September, not just August, but first week and first game at the new Devaney Center. Okay, all right.
Interesting answer, but I like it. It's going to be fun.
I'm a women's sports bias kind of guy because we talk so much about football already. So,
you are exactly 100% correct on that. But moving on now, going away from the game or event, which player are you most looking forward to this kind of the fall season of sorts?
And I've already given away my answer with my women's sports shout out there, but I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to go back to the soccer field. I'm going to say Jordan Jackson. She gets an NCAA clearance to come back for another senior year, had some injuries last year, but even in the brief moments she was on the field last year, making plays, creating chances in front of goal, and just doing really dynamic things. I mean, she got hurt again for basically almost scoring a goal in a play that I thought should have resulted in a penalty kick. And so she has that kind of ability to put pressure on teams, and she has a lot of playmakers who got used to playing without her, and to see her back in there, to see her with the new dynamic of new senior classmates, of just that whole, she's not the only leader on this team. She's not the only senior, and so she can worry less about just being a strong voice of leadership and more about leading with action, leading on the field. And I think a lot of people just chalked up the success to Morgan Marlborough and what she did in her first couple years in Nebraska before transferring. But Jordan Jackson was an integral part of that, and she was a huge. I mean, Nebraska's offense would not have produced at that level no matter who that forward was if they didn't have somebody like Jordan Jackson making plays out of the midfield and connecting up. So I think you're going to see that it wasn't just one player who did all that during those first couple years. And a couple years ago, Jordan Jackson played a huge role in the success of the Nebraska offense for the soccer team early in her career. And I think this year she's going to come back and do it again. And so just looking forward to seeing her back out there. I mean, obviously you hope and pray that it goes out there and injury-free and that she can make the first couple games and respond fine and take a couple tackles and pop back up. So just excited to see her back out there, excited to see her back in the mix, and to see what her second attempt at a senior season can bring.
Yeah.
All right, well, that wraps up our Corn-Fed 5 here for this morning. So like I said, we're going to have a Say What segment where we take a look at what some of the Husker football players have been saying in practice lately and just get a quick opinion on those. And so we'll come back with that more on Corn-Fed Sports in the Morning in our second segment. All right, hello and welcome back to our second segment. It's some more fun with some interviews and some actual clips here. So I promise it's more than just us talking, but it's going to be Gage and I kind of checking on some of the things that Nebraska athletes and some Husker athletes are saying. So in this first one, it's all football edition. So we got 3 football clips. We're going to take some quotes by Nebraska football players and kind of take a closer look at them. So without talking too much about it, we'll set it up. We have Jamal Turner in our first clip here. So we'll take a listen to what Jamal Turner last night had to say about the effect of 2 days of fall camp.
A lot of guys, start, crying when we got here. But we got good leaders, Quincy, Taylor, Ciante. They fire us up, keep us going. It's easy when it's perfect weather outside and you got fresh legs. But you get 3 weeks into camp, that's when it gets hard. And that's when you find your leaders on the team.
Looking at what Jamal had to say there, the guys being sore. I see some of the guys walking off practice field, they're kind of limping, acting like they're sore. Are you really buying into what he's saying, though?
I think, and obviously he knows that anything that's reported, anything that's said is going to create headlines. So I think that he's talking about how guys are crying, they don't even know how to handle it. I think it's just kind of his way to get the message across, saying there's no time for that. There's no time to be caught up in it. So mentioning that it's kind of getting to them, mentioning that it's getting under their skins and wearing on them, I think is just his way of sending the message that, hey, you can't be tired. You can't get caught up with this. This is camp. This is the easiest thing we're going to do all year. So I think it's kind of his way of sending a message. Some of the younger guys send a message to those other guys that, hey, it seems like we should be complaining. It should be tough, but you know what? We got to step up, and we just can't really worry about it. So right. I don't think he's necessarily crying about how hard fall camp is, and I think that some of those guys live for that kind of stuff, and they live for being pushed, and they live for seeing just how much they can handle in a fall camp situation.
Yeah. Moving on from that one, we go to now one of the more, I think it's one of the interesting topics going in this fall camp that no one really has been talking about is our kicker competition. Our next clip, we got Mario Bondi talking. We're going to see what you think about what he has to say right after this.
Sometimes you look, you just want to see what happens, and sometimes you really don't care. You kind of want to focus on what you're doing. Sometimes if you watch the other guy, you lose a lot of focus on what you're supposed to be doing.
So, he's mentioning that no, he's not really worried about the other kickers in fall camp. Are you buying this, or is this kind of gamesmanship, or is this necessarily the right approach to answer that question?
As quick as I am to call out the last one as kind of being putting a little gamesmanship out there, this one I don't think it is. As someone who's gone to a kicking camp and seen what can just happen, that Mauro Bondi and Spencer Lindsay, there's a lot of different things about their build. Spencer Lindsay's kind of just the smooth. He goes out there, he's got the form, he's got the plant foot. That he just goes out there and does his job. I mean, we've yet to see what his leg will hold up.
He's also got experience.
Yeah, I mean, he's got that experience. He's been in there, so you can see that sort of smooth level to him. Morrow's kind of got the big leg, the iron leg that just kind of swings through and makes a big hit on the ball every single time.
Yeah.
And so he's got the distance, it's whether or not he can find the consistency, find the timing with the snapper and the holder, and some of those different technical things. So I think in this situation, he's a lot different style kicker than what he's looking against. So if he's out there looking kind of the smooth, the practiced approach, that can throw him off his rhythm. He's got to focus on his keys. He's got to focus on his plant foot and how he's making contact with the ball every time. He's got a big leg, but his test is going to be how he makes contact, and that might not be the other thing, the other way for the different kickers. So for him to be out there focusing on what he's doing rather than worrying about the other guys around him, I don't think he's lying about that. I don't think he's putting something out there that's not true. That's what he needs to do right now is focus on what he's doing. Because as soon as you start worrying about what somebody else is doing right, you're going to stop remembering what you need to do to make yourself better. And so with something that specific, with how intense kicking can be, that if he just focuses on his plant foot, on locking out his foot, on doing the things that makes his leg as strong as it is, that's the best way he can, rather than just trying to find someone else's style. So I don't think he's doing anything wrong by trying not to get caught up in somebody else's style.
Okay. Last but certainly not least, we're going to go to a clip from Ciante Evans. We'll have its big hits. We're going to talk big hit.
We're here a couple guys.
Oh, no. It's a couple guys that probably ring. Probably right now, probably have to say Zaire. He's a good hitter. I like him. Yeah, I like him.
About anybody in the secondary?
Not right now.
What about you? What do you call it? You a big hitter?
Nah, not really.
Technically sound.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, look at Ciante. He's listed as cornerback. He plays a nickel back, kind of a slot cornerback. My question to you is, he said he's not necessarily a big, guy that makes the big hits. Is it necessary for him playing a nickel back for him to be a big hitter?
I think that it's not necessary for him to be a big hitter, and so that's why he kind of plays it up that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you really were to ask him to get to the inside, I don't think there's any doubt in his mind that he's a big hitter. Here's how I compare defensive backs. Defensive backs are like actors who think they can rap, or athletes who think they can rap. They don't really make a big deal out of it, and they don't say it, but when they get behind that microphone, they just think that they're the biggest man on campus and they're the best rapper to ever live. And the defensive backs are the same way. They don't think they're big hitters. They don't think that they bring the wood. But when they have that opportunity to square somebody up, in their mind, they think that they're Ray Lewis coming over the middle and they're about to break someone. So that's how I think D-backs and hitting people are like actors and athletes who think they can rap. That they don't build themselves up and they don't hype themselves up. But when they get in the moment, there's no doubt in their mind that they're. And I think that he has that potential. I mean, from that position, you have to be a big hitter and be able to lay it down. So he didn't really want to say that anybody in the secondary is a big hitter, but I think that if you asked all of them in the heat of the moment, they all think that they can hit harder than just about anybody else. Well, that wraps up our Say What segment. We tried to jump into the minds a little bit of Nebraska athletes. This Friday, we're going to have a segment with Jordan Hooper. We're going to have some soccer footage. We're going to have some different things coming on. So we'll have a more multimedia intensive segment for our segment 2 on Friday. But for now, that wraps up our Corn-Fed Sports and Morning Show. I'm Pat Radigan.
Gage Peak.
Thanks for joining us.